Curve Expert Panel Series. The Earning Curve is a new platform in webinars and very different than other webinars you all may have attended in the past. You, the audience, drives all the panel questions. My name is Marianne Biangardi, and I am in business development at Commercial Trelaw & Company. We're a full-service CPA firm in St. Louis, Missouri. Today's topic is how sales enablement makes the revenue and profitability impact. We've got a lot of great sales enablement experts here with us today, and we're going to go ahead and, let me mention really quick, it's a double header. So in case you haven't heard, stay tuned for, actually maybe we can have Jake throw that other link up in the chat. In case you want to attend the next session for strategic planning, go ahead and sign up for that as well. Since all of you guys drive the panel questions, we have all these experts here to answer questions that come from you, the audience. Use the thought bubble icon at the bottom of your screen. It's a little chat bubble. Go ahead and type your questions in there as you think of them, and we will get them answered for you. Let's go ahead and start with our introduction. So we've got 5 experts today discussing sales enablement. Our anchor panelist is Ryan Brutch. He's the Vice President of Sales Enablement at Spoke Marketing. Ryan is the founder and creator of the Earning Curve. A fun fact about Ryan is his last name is a linguistic anomaly, if I can say it, consisting of 7 letters but only 1 syllable. An outdoor enthusiast, in August of this year, Ryan completed a 40-mile backcountry traverse of the Wind River Range in the mountainous regions of northwest Wyoming. We also have 4 other amazing panelists today. David Schenberg, Sales Development Manager at Worldwide Technology. David has over 30 years in creative design, marketing, live events, entrepreneurship, and sales strategy. Fun fact, when travel halted because of the COVID pandemic, David used all the time at home to create some syrups marketed locally to raise funds for local food pantries. To date, Shenny's Not So Simple syrup has raised $17,000 by brewing over 800 bottles. That's pretty cool. Jennifer Bardot, good friend of mine, AVP at Enterprise Bank. Great thing about Jennifer is her enthusiasm and energy. She's super authentic and just a great person. She's a great connector, and she just has a gift to connect people, find ways to help people out any way she can. Fun fact, she loves classic cars. She grew up going to car shows and watching Barrett Jackson. On one of those excursions with her dad, she was asked to drive on a Texas Motor Speedway racetrack, topping out in a C5 Corvette at a speed of 120 with her dad in the passenger seat, holding on tight. Douglas Hall is the president and founder of D Advocate and Associates. And I just want to give a shout out to Doug. This morning, he helped me get my audio set. He's like a go-to expert for all this digital stuff. If anybody has any issues, you gotta call him. He helped me figure all this out because I don't know what I'm doing. So he's the go-to expert for navigating digital virtual transformations. As we all know, he helped me this morning for organizations, teams, and individuals. He's also dedicated to helping us all brave this virtual new world as we're all stuck like this because of COVID. A fun fact, he has a super cool cat named Milo. Christy Jones, she's with the Sales Acceleration Group. Christy has 19 plus years as a sales leader. She helps founders increase revenue through improved strategy, process, and people. Fun fact, she interviewed Dennis Hopper at age 17. She's a true crime junkie, and her Uber rating is 4.96, which is slightly higher at 0.3 than her brother, and that's all that matters. Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Ryan, let's kick things off with, we have our first chat question. What is sales enablement, and does it apply to everyone in the sales organization? If not, who is it for? Oh, and you need to unmute, Ryan. Hang on.
There. All right, thank you for that. See, Marianne, you know much more than what you left off as far as what you're doing.
All from my training.
So thank you for that question. In its simplest form, sales enablement is just simply the tools, resources, and organization that, to help salespeople, sales professionals in the field to perform better. And, And, that's really important. I think, the second part of that question is also important, which is, who is it for? So I'm going to actually maybe start by talking about for who it's not for. And, and I would offer that it's not for A players. So why is that? It's, because A players, these are things that are innate to them. They're instinctual. This is why they're A players, because, having the organization in their sales meetings, knowing how to conduct proper discovery, knowing how to manage objections, all of these things are things that they do already extremely well. They're certainly not going to turn down sales enablement initiatives, because the one thing that I've learned about high-performing salespeople is they're constantly about, gaining new tools, resources, education. They're by definition, they love to learn, right? So they won't turn it down, but it's not necessarily that they need it. The other group that, would be the D and F players, and the simple reason for that is when there's reasons that salespeople underperform, and really no amount of tools or resources that you provide them. Even, think of it this way, is even if you could double their performance, you're doubling it from a 1 to a 2. Whereas if you double a top performing sales performance, you're doubling it from a 10 to a 20. So think about which of those numbers that you'd like to have. So who sales enablement is for the, essentially the bulk of your sales team, which are the B and C players. It allows the B players to elevate, to become great, to be your A, become your A players, and your C players, to become good and to be, more productive members of your sales team.
Awesome. Thank you, Ryan. We do have a question here from Ted in the chat. How have you seen sales enablement change recently with the online environment?
By answering that, most of the work that I do is virtual in nature. The opportunity to accept more virtual engagement as opposed to what we traditionally have done in the past, which is get on a plane, go through a lot of logistics, show up, find that we have the wrong people in the room, or at a last minute, a key stakeholder had to bail. We go through a lot of effort to set up these events, and then they don't necessarily go as planned. And so the beauty of the situation we find ourselves in is we can get 90 to 120 minutes of the right people. We can have a very specific set of goals, use some of the nice virtual tools that are available to engage people, and then step back from that, hour and a half to 2 hours and process what we learned, and then be able to come back to that same group, maybe do it again, but come back with some commercial insights, being able to actually demonstrate and build some amount of trust that we actually heard, process, and have some ideas for how to take action. And in this time more than ever, executives who we call on need plans of action, and anybody that can bring them those commercial insights and actions, that's gold.
I want to jump on that too. I think it's a great point, David. And a big thing that I will say is that before this whole pandemic, people weren't as accepting of video calls. People were a little bit more frustrated with, I got to do a video call. Can't I just dial in? Now the adoption of video as a tool means that your prospects are more than willing to take a video call from you. In fact, they're almost demanding it for their own safety. So one of the biggest barriers before in sales was, if he's doing a video call, I'm not showing up, or she's deciding to do a virtual and we really wanted them on site. You were looked at as not trying hard enough. Now it's not only a consideration, but you have such greater access into their homes. We talked about this on the last earning curve. But what I would say to the original question as well, you have a much better opportunity to measure now than you ever did before. And even to the point of most people don't even care if you're recording these calls. So talk about going back and watching your game day tape. I mean, to find things, objections that you might not have heard or openings you might not have caught, to be able to go back and say to a client, hey, I thought about that call and I really think the point you made here was really relevant. That's something that we didn't have the opportunity to do before when we were doing everything analog.
Point. Ted has a follow-up here as well. A little bit off target, he says, but have you guys seen online meeting acceptance rates improve over the traditional meetings?
I'd say yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
I would also say what we've seen, people, and I don't want to speak for the group, people are much better at getting on calls. You know, when I was doing this a few years ago, it was a nightmare. The first 5 minutes was always, you're on mute. No, try doing this, try doing that. And that's crucial sales time. Now they're in the call. So-and-so joined your call 3 minutes ago. Run the computer and get on the call. So, yeah, I'd say that it's exponentially increased over time.
Yeah, I would also say that meetings are starting and stopping on time like never before, right? I mean, your calendar is solid now, right? So to Doug's point, sales reps are getting more done. In-person meetings or just regular phone calls seem to always run over, didn't start on time. People are they are spot on. People are sitting in the green room waiting for me to let them in on the hour, on the half hour. So really, we should be getting more sales time out of that.
From speaking from a salesperson's perspective, my time has been utilized much more efficiently than ever before. There's no time wasted in a car. Everything is just aligning so much smoothly. And they've downloaded Zoom, they've downloaded WebEx, they're navigating it really smoothly.
Yesterday, and I was so off put. I felt like such an idiot. I'm like, I got to get in a car and drive, and he was only 7 minutes away. So I think we've all acclimated to a new modality since April.
Okay, we've got another question here. How does sales enablement support the efforts of your sales team? Christy, do you want to weigh in on that?
I think, particularly, I think one of the things that I saw once COVID hit with my clients was they didn't really have enough resources in writing because they were used to being in the office. So it was all what I call lean over the QB tribal knowledge, right? Just yell over the QB and get your answer. So I think the most interesting thing for me from a team perspective, and I'm still onboarding, helping clients onboard new reps, right? So people are doing a lot of hiring. I'm hiring SDRs and AEs and customer success and marketing folks for my clients. And so we're now literally the sales playbook is up to date. It's accurate. It's got more resources than it ever had before. So, one of the things that, Ryan talked about, who's sales enablement for and who's it not for, I want to emphasize that it's for new hires. It's for onboarding. So we're cleaner than we've ever been. I've just never seen so much in writing before. Thank you, David, for your support. So yeah, I think, from a team perspective, not only should you be able to go to a shared drive, SharePoint, a Google Drive, something like that to get your answer, new hires should be onboarding much more quickly than ever before.
Yeah, and if we look at fundamentally, where it helps is it helps in the areas of discovery, which is your question set. I think a lot of people put emphasis on statements when they should really be putting much more emphasis on constructing, effective questions. Objection management. And notice how I didn't say objection handling. Objection management and handling are two different things. Conducting an effective sales meeting. Qualifying, being able to effectively qualify leads. Being able to use sales collateral. I mean, that's a huge mistake that, we see salespeople constantly, providing the wrong collateral at the wrong time. And then how do you differentiate against your competitors? These are all elements of being able to move a prospect through a sales process effectively and be able to answer all of their questions, the things that are important to them, not the things that are important to us, but the things that are important to them. And that's the key to being able to be effective, and that's how sales enablement helps.
To add on to what Christy and Ryan are saying, I think there's a common denominator that stretches across, no matter what tools, no matter how sophisticated your sales org is or the products that you're selling. I think the one thing that sales enablement really gives us are the levers and dials of measurement, if it's done well, that we need to be able to coach, onboard, respond, adjust, decide where to train. Without some level of consistency, you move into a space where, salespeople, for good or for bad, sell each other on why we should apply resources to their deal. and chase their opportunity versus another one without some kind of metrics. We're really just kind of shooting from the hip and working with our gut, which can be fun and can work for some, but it's not how an organization can scale.
Or characteristically, a lot of salespeople are just creatures of habit. And so what they do is they find something that works and they just repeat it over and over and over again, and assuming that every target, every client persona, every pitch is going to go the same. And then if they can get to a 40% ratio, they're happy. But when you're able to start measuring, the micro stuff, when you're able to look at conversions, how many people actually agreed to go to a demo, how many went from demo to pitch or proposal, and what about those specific, targets was similar. Sales enablement allows us to just, as salespeople, it allows us to really hone in on the quality targets. And it also means teaching salespeople that you don't have to chase everything that moves. You don't have to it's not a numbers game, it's a conversion game. It's a math game. And I think having the data to prove that can get through some stubborn salespeople's, I just have my one trick. I just ask them what would keep them from buying this right now. It's like, no, dude, look at the numbers. And when you do that, effectiveness means commissions. And that's where they start picking up and going, oh, maybe this does work.
That's right, money. If I could add on to Doug's point is, well, actually, I'll let us go to the next question. I think the point's, well made.
Okay, we've got, how does a marketing person who is having a hard time collaborating with the salesperson remove that communication gap?
I'm going to just say that again. Show them that they're making money. The easiest thing to show a salesperson is a close due to your data. And then they're like, okay, show me more.
Yeah.
That's my opinion.
And actually, I will jump in on that one on Doug's comment. Here's the problem for salespeople is when they continue the status quo is status quo. Salespeople are just like companies. Is when you're constantly doing the status quo, but the nature of how a customer buys is always changing, eventually that status quo is not going to be effective for you. So sales enablement allows you to break the status quo and get ahead of the curve, versus being static. And when you're static, as we've seen numerous, especially with COVID, whole businesses wind up dying as a result.
You could take the work off of salespeople a lot of times with the right tech stack and automations in play, just letting them know which targets to go after, which leads to call on, which leads to email, what the best time is. A lot of them, most salespeople will be happy with that information as long as they don't have to read the data themselves.
The areas that I've been emphasizing. Sorry. You good, Jennifer? One of the ways that I've been encouraging sales and marketing to work together is a couple of different ways. Engaging marketing or having marketing engaged during the sales cycle. Sales reps are always very fearful of this, but I've been working with some clients where the sales cycle is 12 or 18 months, and it's hard for a sales rep independently by themselves to keep the ball rolling over 18 months and keep moving it from stages 1 to 2 to 2 to 3 and 3 to 4. And so really allowing marketing to come in and kind of fill that gap with thought leadership, how to build your business case internally, how to determine ROI, and then also what I call the not right nows. So people that maybe you go out and prospect, have that good discovery call, they are a good fit, but they're not ready to enter into an active sales cycle with you at this point. I think those people need their own marketing track, right? They know you're already warm. They know who you are. You don't have to spell your company's name. And so they should be treated differently than a colder prospect. So I've been really working with marketing teams and encouraging sales to be more open to letting them play a little bit during the sales cycle, which I know is super scary for sales reps. Don't touch my prospect. You're going to screw my deal up. I think marketing could actually help speed up the sales cycle and reduce the amount of time if allowed. So I think from an enablement standpoint, putting those kind of plans together, if I'm in marketing, maybe going and proposing something like that would be beneficial.
Absolutely, like Christy just said. I mean, marketing is, and I said this once before, if you're a sales leader and you don't have marketing involved in working on your sales conversion and providing resources to that, you're behind the 8 ball. That's a great point.
You're a sales and marketing team, then you're well behind the 8 ball. I mean, the only metric for the only true metric for marketing is sales, and the only true lead and validator for the product you're selling is marketing. Those two have to be intertwined. If they're not, when those departments are siloed, what you have is an unpredictable sales cycle. You're just closing your eyes and hoping people close.
Yeah, and it's not to say that marketing should replace your sales, process. I think that some people have, sometimes offer that up, and that would be a mistake to do so. But marketing definitely needs to be more involved.
Funnel needs to run into the pipe. Sales should manage the pipe. Marketing should manage the funnel, and that handoff should be very clear and clean. If you're validating leads and scoring leads, sales should be able to change that number every day. We're good here. Give me some 7s. Actually, we're busy. Don't send me anything unless it's a 9. And marketing knows what to continue nurturing, and sales knows what's coming in. If you've got that kind of fluidity, your cycle is guaranteed as much as me making a ring noise when I should have muted.
Okay, guys, we've got another question here in chat, and this is actually for Jennifer. We keep having customers giving us verbal approvals, i.e. yes, but then still not follow through on the sale. Has this ever happened to you, and what can you do about it?
I would say yes, it's happened to me, and if anything, I think that's an opportunity for me to actually tell them no. It's like, okay, stop. You did say yes, and I understand and I'm hearing you as far as your buy-in, but let's retract and slow that process down so then within that time frame we can build rapport. I can actually hear what they're reaching out for me for, and maybe there's more opportunity on the table that I wouldn't have known if I would have just gone with their yes. And it allows you to understand the value that you bring to them, because if it's transactional like that, it's just going to go out the door just as quick as it came in. So I would say, yes, this has happened to me. And in a situation like that, I've literally said, okay, I hear your yes, and that's awesome, but let me explain my process, and then you can have the opportunity to tell me yes once more. So
That's a great point. That really is. It's just because you get a yes, when that yes is fast, that doesn't mean that that yes is sticky.
Okay, we've got, another one here. Do you all have a good example of a marketing engagement after an initial sales call? You talked branded emails, or I'm not sure what you guys understand that question? It kind of trailed off.
I think it may be a follow-up to my conversation, so let me see if I can help, and then Ted, let me know if I'm on or off. Understanding every step in the buyer's journey, right? And so marketing should have a plan for every step in the buyer's journey and how they can support sales along the way. So depending on what sales stage you're coming out of discovery, if that goes into stage 1 or that goes into stage 2. So based on the buyer journey and where the buyer's at through the sales process, marketing should be supporting that along the way. And it could be a lot of things, right? I've worked with marketing departments who have done super creative things and found out that the decision maker at an organization we really wanted to land was a Tom Brady fan. So they went to FedEx and got a life-size cardboard cutout of Tom Brady and then the sales rep and put their arms around each other and put it in the mail, right? Marketing did that for them. So they can get super creative. So I would say it may not be cookie cutter, right? So there may be certain things that you send along the buyer journey, like as you're in stage 4, verbal commitment, as we just talked about, maybe they get a white paper talking about how to build your business case internally or how to determine ROI, right? Buyer's remorse also happens quickly. So as the official contract with T's and C's goes out, that's no better time than to solidify that relationship and to ensure that buyer's remorse doesn't happen. So marketing can do a lot of different things, and it's not always formalized, and it could be like always consider having marketing help you with customized items too.
Yeah, and also please think about secondary peer influence. If you're trying to close somebody in an organization and the people that sit next to them or the people that make the final decision are seeing your content also and are aware of your product, when that comes up and they say, hey, I got a bid from so-and-so, oh, I just heard about them yesterday, so-and-so likes them. Peer influence is everything now in helping decisions get made. So even though you might have an internal champion, that doesn't mean the deal is closed. So starting to work those other areas, that's where marketing can really step in with lookalike campaigns or pure just branding initiatives.
Okay, we've got another one here. We have always been order takers, business booming, no selling. COVID changed things. Now we are not sure we can even survive. We need help changing the mindset. What do you guys think? This is from Doug Risch.
I just want a little more information. Yeah, I mean, tell me why business is tanking. Is it because of the industry, the audience, who you're selling into? So give me a little bit more.
Maybe time for some innovation. Yeah.
I think they were just taking advantage of inbounds, and obviously their hospitality, but the reality is, and I hate the term pivot, I always say unless you're Rudy Rutinger or getting chased by a crocodile, you shouldn't be pivoting. But the reality is, this is where you start looking at other services and product offerings. And I hate to say it, but you might need to refresh some of the team members. If you have a lot of people who are just used to being receivers, you might want to bring some hunters in. It shakes things up a little bit. This is where partnerships are really important. Getting with another organization who could use what you had and sell it for you instead of changing the whole game internally could be a much faster shift. But you got to rethink the game, and you got to do it from a 30,000-foot perspective.
What are your thoughts on this? Because you are, because I feel like, having a plan in place, would be the number one thing. But would like you to elaborate on it a little bit.
So the having a plan in place, I think, is what the chat message is about. The plan was, we have a booming business and the demand is there. So I think, to your point, no one plans. I mean, they could or should, but no one really plans for a pandemic. Especially, although I have to say, I do, and maybe the reason you've called me out here is I have a background in events and hospitality, but the hospitality industry is the first to suffer during a crisis. I mean, it got hit hard at 9/11. It gets hit hard anytime there's any international, turmoil, which is going to be always. And so, I mean, if you're in the hospitality industry, and I'm going to direct this directly at the questioner, I mean, there needs to be diversity in your mix of business. The ultimate opportunity for you is to figure out, and it's an amalgam of, I think, what you've already heard from a couple other people. There needs to be some amount of small, medium, and large that you can lean on depending on whether times are good or times are bad. So if times are good, you do all your large business, right? To Doug's point, give me some 9s. I don't want any 7s or 6s. And when times are rough, you got to do a lot of smalls. Small meetings, right? Small revenue, small opportunities, small ways to, use the space or the resources that you have in new and innovative ways. And I mean, you've had plenty of time to think about this. So my guess is your business already has a pretty large coffer of ideas, but it needs to be realistic about the current situation and not optimistic or hopeful for what could happen or what we hope would happen. But let's focus on what's really happening. How do we make dimes? And later on, we can go back and make dollars.
And if I could add on to that, when you look at the elements of the plan, I would look at it through, the lens of sales enablement. But I would start with, and just turn things that we've talked about in the questions and apply it to your business. Is, how well does marketing, support the sales process? How effective are we at conducting discovery? How well do we handle objections? How well do we set competitive differentiation? I mean, all of those things you kind of have to go through one by one and have some. And I think Doug raised a point about having metrics around it. That becomes huge, because that's the barometer to basically say, here's how effective we are at executing against this particular, and moving customers through the various stages of the sales process. The thing is, it's not just about closes, it's about how effectively you move customers between the stages of the sales process.
I think the big challenge that Doug's probably facing in that organization is they were order takers, right? That means they were just taking inbound. So you can't take an inbound team and flip them to an outbound team overnight. So, I mean, to someone else's point on the panel, you may not have all the right players. So first and foremost, who within the existing group can hunt? You know, who understands what outbound prospecting looks like? Do you even have the sales enablement tools to do that? Do you have a sales loft or an outreach IO or HubSpot sequences? You know, do you have any automation, outbound automation? So, I mean, I think the biggest challenge is if the company thinks you can take a bunch of inbound folks who are used to responding to chat or email or phone and flip them into outbound hunters, that's a recipe for disaster. So you may be able to pull some people out, but you also may have to hire or retool your team.
That's a great point, Christy.
So look at that filing cabinet. If you've been getting a bunch of inbounds for all this time, these are the people you call on. And even if you can't sell them something right now, you know, look at other products, look at other things. And I think it's a Carnegie line, but it's also the time that you ask for a referral. I know you're not looking to use our services right now. I know that nobody's planning the next 6 months, but is there anybody you think I should be talking to about next year? Or is there anything that you would like to see? And, you know, start getting information from your buyers that have come to you. They should be scored highly. They came to you. So let's see who else looks like them and let your receivers take those calls since they were the ones that talked to them originally.
Yeah, so to add on to that, so, you know, in the time it took the two of you to answer the question, I went to LinkedIn and looked up Doug to look at what part of hospitality you're in. So Doug, specifically, you know, because of the assets that you manage, because of the people and the relationships that you already have, there's still a demand for the services that your organization provides. And my guess is you're experimenting in the same space a lot of people are with entertainment, which is to change the venue, not just put things in screens and windows like we have to do today to have this panel, but create experiences. You know, there are plenty of businesses that are doing well and do need to entertain their customers and attract and retain those customers. And so they need the talent, they need the engagement in new ways. So I think this is your opportunity to engage an audience differently and build a different base of customers that will feed the machine when we can return back to a time when people can actually join the venue and experience live music and events together. I mean, you're part of a large group of people who are all hurting in the same way, and I mean, this is your opportunity for to the previous points, new partnerships, build more relationships, supply something that everybody needs in a new way. I mean, these are all kind of generic, like, you know, how do we make lemonade out of these damn lemons we got, right? So I know that's not what you want to hear, but that is kind of the reality of where we're at.
And retrofit those meeting rooms for virtual. Do it now while you have the time. Do it while there's nothing else going on. People are going to want meeting rooms that they can connect with others in other cities and can still sit 6 feet apart from one another. There's going to be use cases. I know in the food, and it's heads and beds in hospitality, it's butts and seats in restaurants, but with virtual, you can be global. So even though you were a destination location, you could still represent your general vicinity and give them the ability to connect globally. So start looking at ways to incorporate the new technologies and kind of evolve in the crisis.
Guys, let's see. Let's go to another question here. This is for David. How would I create qualification gates that either move an opportunity forward for an investment or, more importantly, get it out of an active rotation?
Yeah, so, I mean, from my perspective, I think this is highly linked to the discovery process. I think it leans on some of the conversation we've already had. I mean, even if you set up a few gates that cover the due diligence of a sales process, I mean, you effectively can meter and make decisions on what's inbounds versus out of bounds in a sales cycle. You know, depending on the size of the organization and the number of experts it takes to close a sale. So this varies wildly, right? So if you're in a technology space and there's, you know, solution selling going on, you're likely to need to bring in some experts, which can increase the cost of your sale. So if you're in one of those markets where a sale involves some expensive, smart people to both define, close, and then deliver the services, then the investments that you're making need to be made more carefully. I mean, if you're someone that's, you know, selling a high quantity of things where the sale is quick and turns quick, this is maybe not, you still will probably want some gates, but the gates are going to be simplistic. But if it's a complex selling environment, as I mentioned before, without some measurable set of due diligence, not only does you avoid being able to signal to one another that this diligence has occurred and therefore it's worth my time to climb onto your deal and help out, or swarm your deal because it's very close to closure, and this is where it's all hands on deck. We need to lock this thing down because of its size and scope and commitment. I mean, those decisions have to be made with a little bit more accuracy and numerics as opposed to gut, because salespeople will default to, let's just get 30 minutes on the phone and I'll tell you about my deal and then you'll love it because I'm going to promise you all the wonderful things that will happen when we solve this customer's problem, which will then unlock all this other business. We're constantly being asked to basically solve the holy grail for a customer in order to gain entrance. And the reality of it is, this might just be a test that they put in front of people to keep them away. And if you're the sucker that thinks you can solve it, and maybe you'll get lucky, and that's what they're hoping is you'll get lucky and you'll solve a big problem, and then okay, you're worth it. But there's a lot of other gates in the process that tell you whether or not you should invest money or put it off to a later date or completely stay away from it.
Add on to that. This is why I think bringing organization to your sales process is so important. It is, for each stage of the sales process, as you're moving from an introductory meeting all the way through to the sales presentation to close, to manage that process well, you really need to be setting entry criteria and exit criteria for each of those gates to say, in order for us to say that this stage has been executed or completed well, this is the things that we require going into this stage, and these are the things that we require coming out of the stage, and having specific criteria for each of those, and having criteria to say, this is how, by fulfilling and having, and meeting success around each of these criteria, now and only now should we really be advancing it to the next sales stage.
Okay, we've got another one here in chat. What are some of the common mistakes that salespeople make that inhibit their success?
I'll start.
Same thing. I mean,
I'll give you my first 17, and then everybody else can jump in where appropriate, or just David, just give me the +1 on anything you really like. So let me just start from let's talk about, Doug mentioned funnel and pipeline. So not consistently prospecting, so not filling the top of your funnel, not adding new things to your funnel. I hear all the time. So welcome to Q4, where all sales reps are doing are closing business, and then we walk in January the 2nd to an empty pipeline. So consistent prospecting. So I just wrote a blog post called #discipline, and that's all prospecting is, right? It's the redheaded stepchild. Jennifer, it's the last, it's the first thing on your list every morning and the last thing you ever get to every day, if you get to it at all. Back to the conversation we've been having. Everything is I met your coworkers. Discovery call. Not everyone. So I'm so tired of seeing deals in the pipeline that are a fit. They are ICP. They are a fit, but they're not right nows. They never intended to actively participate in a sales cycle with you. So they get in the pipeline, and I affectionately say, stalled is not a stage, but you go in there and you see all these stalled deals within the pipeline. So that requires discipline too. So don't put things in the pipeline. You have to have a nurture strategy. And because sales reps inevitably don't have a nurture strategy for those not right nows, they put them in the pipeline so they don't lose track of them. I hear this all the time. I don't want to lose track of any of these deals. I know they're not ready yet. Well, that's not a pipeline deal. Your executives at your company can't make budgetary decisions if you've got fluff in your pipeline. One of the most consistent problems I'm also seeing is getting off one call without firming up the next call with action items, goals, game plan, what's the agenda to the next meeting. And then all of a sudden, your reps are like, well, they said to call them next week. And I go, well, how many weeks ago was that? He's like, 3. And I go, right. So again, people who are actively interested in purchasing or evaluating your product or service or more than willing to set up firm follow-up calls and engage with you in that type of way. So, you getting off the call without that next firm follow-up scheduled, shame on you. Again, #discipline. So those are my 3 pet peeves currently.
Yeah, and I'll add on to this one. And these are, in order, is number one, and they really tie into Christy's points, which is effective qualification of leads. It is, time and time again is we see leads advancing, just aggressively from each stage of the sales process from the beginning to the end, only to find out, late that we didn't ask one critical question around budget or something along those lines, and the sales never qualified in the first place. Should have never been advanced in those sales. The second thing would be the conduct of effective sales meetings, and again, it ties into what Christy has alluded to, which is basically having a firm agenda, sticking to time, being on time. It's, customers will give you all sorts of permission to be late and then, and to run your meeting long. And because they say it's okay, doesn't mean that it's okay. And then, as Christy also alluded to, is having, being able to set up the next meeting, allowing yourself, enough time to set up the next meeting and not rush it at the end, because, at the point that you have them, you have their undivided attention. Any place else, you don't have their undivided attention. And then the last thing would be, discovery. I see more errors in discovery, and people just would throw away questions that, that go nowhere, questions that don't add any substance to the conversation. And, and I'll see people come out of discovery thinking, wow, I asked a few questions and, I think we did awesome. And really, at that moment, I can look at it and identify it and say that opportunity is going nowhere.
So to build on that, I think we've talked about a lot of the pieces. This entire, subject of discussion can feel complex, but this is one of those topics where simplicity is really everything. I mean, I hate to use the term blocking and tackling or table stakes, but this entire process of sales enablement, it boils down to taking inventory of what you know versus what you don't know. And I'm not going to say salespeople. I'm going to say human beings will go to the easiest elements of task that they can. If there's a difficult, unknown space, you know as well as I do that is going to be what scuttles your deal or delays you or kills you or whatever it is that you're worried about. And avoiding that or not paying attention to it or not giving it enough attention, I think that's the killer right there. It's if it's even just, hey, these are the 4 quadrants of knowledge that we have about customers. Which of these quadrants do we have a competitive advantage? Do we have under our care? Because the one quadrant where you're the weakest, if you're wondering why your deal is stalled or why it's not advancing or why we keep losing in a particular area, it's probably in that quadrant. And that would be where you'd need to shore up your resources or ask better questions or develop a process that feels like a product. Do something that gets the customer in that quadrant and working together with you, because if they won't go there and they won't answer your questions and they won't spend time in that space, chances are that's the sale you're not going to get.
Yeah, I simplify this even further, and I know we've touched on this a little bit, but the number one thing that salespeople do in my mind that screws up sales and slows the pipe is not listening. It comes down to them just not listening, whether it's to the people trying to enable them, to the prospect they're speaking to. It just comes in from that gut run of just push, pitch, move. And ultimately, when a salesperson just becomes present in a conversation and starts to look at the big picture, they perform so much better. But, having trained enough of them this time, it's just you bang your head against the wall going, why didn't you do the thing we talked about last week? Oh, which thing was that? And it's like, ugh.
And I just like to put emphasis, think about what Doug just said, is, failure to listen. What is the one thing that you can do that opens up the ears and not the mouth?
I'm paying attention. Can you repeat that?
ask questions. But that's exactly, Christy. That was a wonderful example. I mean, it's because that's what that's basically salespeople are so intent about what they want to say next that's the reaction is customers talking. But how many times have you seen a salesperson do exactly that? And I'm sorry, I didn't catch that again. Can you repeat that? Because they're too busy focusing on what they want to say, not basically trying to ask effective questions so that they can work to understand.
I've been in pitches where I've had clients ask really good questions, like where I was sitting behind a salesperson watching them present. Client asked a great question, something that could have been definitely a qualifier or something you could have moved to a close, and watch salespeople go, a specific one go, oh, we'll get to that when I'm done with my presentation. I have a lot more to tell you. No, you don't. I used to tell my salespeople all the time, as soon as you get a close or a confirmation of a close, back away slowly. But some are just so prepped to just get all the information out there, get the pitch out, show how hard they worked. It's like, it's about getting as quickly to a conversion as possible and then getting out of the room before they change their mind. And of course, you want to nurture it along from there and set up next steps, but they talk too much and they don't listen. Well, so you're going to mute.
Yeah. So Doug, I think part of what you drive at is, and this is not. Let's empathize for a minute of the plight of the quota carrying salesperson for a minute, right? The pressure that they're under to close a thing. And again, depending on how complex your sales process is, I'm using the example of a complex sales process. There are a series of yeses. And so the question is, as you make your meeting, event, phone call, even if it's just a 5-minute phone call, the question is, what specific item are you closing for that day, that meeting, that part of the puzzle? Like,
what stage are you moving forward? I mean, this could be just moving one single stage day. All I got to do is get to a demo. All I got to do is get to a proposal. Measuring small is what's so important in those cases. And it
may just be, you're really kind of navigating what could be a very kind of Boolean chart of behavior, right? So, you're in this box that says phone call with customer. You've got one of 3 outcomes that could happen here, and one of them includes go away, you bother me, kid. But one of them is I want to move to the step where you actually engage me in a substantive conversation with my smart people, with your smart people, to actually break down a challenge that I've been having. Like, I don't know what executive wouldn't say yes to the opportunity to bring some smart people around a table and break down the problem you already know they have. And so from go away, kid, you bother me to, you seem like a group I could lean on, and I need a group right now to do this thing. Like, all you're closing for potentially at that point is their agreement to put some people in a room, which then you can do more demonstration of your capabilities. In this phone call you're having, all you're trying to do is get them to agree to whatever that step is of moderate choices. And then from there, you focus on the next leg of the journey, right? And it's not always a linear journey, right? And so that's the problem is you get someone on the phone who seems interested to listen to you, and then you want to vomit everything you know on that person, and you can't help yourself because they're listening, and they're asking good questions, and you're engaged. But you forget what you're closing for in that particular day, and you might be a little overzealous.
Yeah, I challenge my salespeople to just learn something about that call. Learn when they buy. Figure out when their budget renews. Don't go in there to close anything. Just get enough data from them that you have something else to follow up with. Now, if a close presents itself, great. But it should be confirm, convert, confirm, convert, confirm, convert, then close. And the more knowledgeable you are about that product, and the more you nurture it through, the better connected you are with that buyer, and the more chance you're going to have of that buyer staying in your ecosystem because they trust you. Asking questions and understanding the buyer means that you're going to understand how they buy and why they buy so that you could predictively, go towards the next buyer and use those learnings to say, I was just talking, of course, you can drop names. I was just talking to somebody at a major firm. They said that this was their biggest buying challenge this year. Are you dealing with that, David? Why, yes, Doug, I am. Well, this is how they solved it. How are you solving? But moving through that kind of understanding instead of just going in and going, let me talk to you about my product, you never learn what your product does for your actual buyer. Once you do, you can sell it over and over again.
So disciplined pre-call planning is really the key. And, what David just said really resonates is, asking yourself the question, what are you closing for? But more importantly, on that particular day, it is, your goal is to accomplish what you're aiming to set out for on that particular day. When you start doing more or less from that particular goal on that particular day, that's when you start getting yourself into the trouble. That's when you start getting yourself in the problems. So put discipline to your call planning or your meeting planning and maintaining that is critical for advancing sales through the sales process.
I mean, we are setting up for a series of yeses here. There are very few sales cycles where you go in, you have a conversation, and you get a big yes. And that yes is a yes that sticks. We talked about a yes that's sticky. The reason they call it engagement is because you ask a question and they say yes. It's kind of like popping the big question, right? So, getting to the altar and getting married is built on a series of yeses. The first yes, when you ask that other person out, all the way to the ultimate yes, will you be my forever? And so, not that we're marrying our customers, but it taps into the same human behavior. We want to say yes to something that's low risk. And that opens us up to seeing whether or not you're going to deliver what you say you're going to do. And that opens up the next yes, which is a little bit bigger, and the next, and the next. It's a series of yeses until you become the trusted advisor, or you are the trusted provider of a set of solutions that potentially has unlimited capacity, right, to adjacent markets and stakeholders you haven't met. This land and expand or account dominance, or however you look at the penetration of the width of your customers, it's just the extension and buying the political capital of the yeses you got from the department you're working with and translating that to other departments and other areas where there's yeses available to you. That's why 70+% of your business comes from existing customers. So they're the ones that are already used to saying yes to you.
And true sales enablement is letting the salesperson know when they're most likely to get a yes and from whom. So when you're looking for those yeses, that's where marketing and sales teams can get together and say, this is when this type of buyer makes a decision. This is what pain points this type of buyer is experiencing. They're hedging your yeses.
And and if you're looking for proof in the pudding on this, look no further than to what Jennifer had said earlier, that fast yes. That fast yes is also a big yes, but really more often what it actually is a no. So taking what Jennifer said was his particular point in this conversation, making sure that you back the customer up a few steps so that you can actually take a confident leap forward and solidify the larger yes down the road, as David had alluded to. It's a series of steps to get to the altar.
From a sales perspective, it also allows you to be empathetic and authentic and not desperate. You never want to be desperate in a sales role because you want to be able to display your value and establish trust and rapport. So I think it kind of gives you, established footing with your stance to, help build that relationship with your buyer.
We talk about a lot, but we don't necessarily get to do very often is, if you're in a large sales cycle, where the outcome is a multi-million-dollar, high profit opportunity, there's no guarantee that you can actually deliver in your customer's environment, right? And so to Jennifer's point, and I think to many of the points as they come together and coalesce into just strategy, if there are some steps that you would take under contract that allow you to discover, to go through and see where the risks and compliance and other regulations and pieces are that could trip you up, or data that's unavailable to a system that has to be, come through an API or some other technology component. I mean, the early phases of delivery are typically, you've got a multi-million-dollar contract in hand, you're 6 months in, you've spent X dollars of your customer's money, and now you discover you can't deliver. And now you'll never do business with that company again. And it's not your fault. You took the large contract, you felt good about how it retired part of your quota or all of your quota, and you don't get paid till it gets delivered in a lot of situations, right? Or you get your full benefit once the customer has adopted the technology or whatever it is you sold. And so, to Jennifer's point, it's helpful to say, look, we ultimately want to do this large deal with you, but let's go ahead and get these early phases under contract that allow us to do the discovery, the planning, the testing. Let's deliver a proof of concept or minimum viable product with the rest of the contract in tow. Like once we can deliver this first leg of the journey, we would like the rest of the contract, and we believe that you'll want to give it to us. But let's not get under this massive contract and all the legal trappings until we're sure we can deliver this first part and that you're a good fit for us and we're a good fit for you. If you go through that kind of process with a customer, basically what you're saying is, let's get engaged before we get married. We can always break it off with no harm, no prenup, no pain or suffering. We'll be sad a little bit that we didn't get what we thought we were going to get, didn't turn out to what we hoped it would be, but we move on and we learn from what we learned.
I got divorced. That would have been way.
We do call it business therapy in a lot of cases for a reason.
I wish I could have articulated like that.
Thank you.
Well, it looks like, guys, this is a great panel, but we are so close to time, and we've got another session coming. So I think we're going to probably have to wrap up unless you guys maybe anybody closing remarks before we flip over? Anybody want to add anything? We don't have any more questions. Ryan, do you want to say any closing remarks? And then,
in the short time, I would just simply say the key to having a successful sales process is to plan and organize your sales process.
Anybody else?
Measure.
That's good. I like it.
Prospect and the data.
Say listen and everything, like Christy said too, hold yourself accountable and follow through with your strategy and action plan as a salesperson. So.
Great advice. This was a really, really good panel. I love the interaction and the conversation. So here's all of our contact info. If anyone has any questions, everyone is happy to connect with you on LinkedIn and just shoot us an email, take a screenshot of this page. We will be probably following up soon. Thank you so much for joining us, and I want to thank the sponsors, Spoke Marketing, Enterprise Bank, Commercial Youre, and join us for the next one. Join us right now, Strategic Planning. The link is in the chat box. If you guys haven't seen it, you can go ahead and register, and we will see you over there in the next one. Thanks.
Bye-bye. Thank you.